caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. By FPZERO Simulators, providing professional grade simulators for your home and our drivers. And by just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. Additional support from Design Display Structures, Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Back again once more on a Tuesday evening for more caterhamracer.com action, and once again you join us for more racing in this off-season series, the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series, to keep the drivers occupied whilst there's no real racing and before they get going again in April. We've already had 3 fantastic weekends at Brands Hatch. Then we've also had Zolder and last time out at Estoril, but we've now moved across from the Iberian Peninsula back onto mainland Western Europe and onto the coast of Holland, of the Netherlands, and of Circuit Park Zandvoort. It's right on the coast near the town of Zandvoort in North Holland, and it really is nestled amongst the sand dunes. It's very near the beach as well, so quite a weekend you can spend both on the coast and also at the racetrack once more. Scott Woodward and Chris Hutchinson once again here in the commentary box, but in the middle of qualifying here, and what should be, Chris, quite an interesting race evening, because in terms of the format, with the fact that we usually have 3 drivers being promoted into the grand final at the end of the season, which is taking place in a couple of weeks' time at the Nürburgring, a lot of the field, most of half the field, as you can see on the screen here, is already full of drivers that have already qualified. So there's only one driver that has qualified which isn't racing tonight, which is with James Murphy. All the rest are on the grid tonight. So what it really means, Chris, is that whilst there might be a great battle up front, we need to obviously keep an eye on that for entertainment purposes. More importantly, in some aspects, it's going to be the drivers behind them that aren't on that list that are in the entry tonight that are going to be fighting for those last 3 automatic spots, because those who don't are going to have to go through the last chance saloon race at Barcelona if they want to try and secure their spot to get the last few places on the grid. It'll be the last 6 places by the looks of it to make the 18 car final. So lots at stake for some drivers, but for others it's just going to be a bit of a fun night and extra practice. So kind of a tale of 2 races tonight.
Yeah, good evening everybody. And last time we came to Zandvoort, they had fantastic racing, some really close finishes. So we're really looking forward to the good racing. And yep, the drivers out front have nothing to do but try and win. They've got nothing to gain from it, but that's what they'll certainly go and try and do. And yes, the battle for the qualifying spaces will probably be slightly behind them, obviously, or amongst them. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit trickier tonight to keep up with who is qualifying, but we will try our best as the evening goes on. But I think anyone on this grid, including people like the people we're looking at, Mike Hilton, have a chance, depending on what happens to the other races, to make one of those qualifying spaces. So yeah, kind of an interesting dynamic. So like you say, we'll keep an eye at the front of the race, but equally we'll be keeping an eye on who is in those qualifying spaces, because really that is the main aim of tonight's race.
Let's just bring up the bring up the qualifiers that have gone through already, just once again, because we'll quickly go through them. As you mentioned, the only one that isn't racing tonight again that has already booked his slot for the final is James Murphy, who won last time out at Estoril. So the drivers that did book their spots were David Rowe, Will Rosette and Steve McMaster, who were the first 3 qualifiers back at Brands Hatch. Then it was Christian Zaruta, Jensen Hassler and Richard Gallagher, who were then the qualifiers from Zolder. And then Estoril saw James Murphy ahead of Martin Buchan from Scotland and his fellow countryman Blair McConaughey as well. So it's good. One thing we can note is David Rowe is back tonight. So he hasn't set a time qualifying yet, but he is at least hopefully going to be out there and put a time in very soon, because he'll be one of the last ones to do so. But in terms of the rest of the order that we've got in the mix here, looking down that sort of timing tower to see who are going to be the potential people, and we can't tell always too much by qualifying on practice times, but at the moment, if this was a race result, if things would stand as it was, it would be Guy Crawford, Paul Fernhoff and Mark Bennett. But you've also got the likes there as David Rose clearly listing. He's popped up into 3rd place in the times. Other ones who are in there who could possibly cause an interesting run. Steve Arnell's in there. He's always in the mix if he can get himself into a good position. James Wingfield is quick as well. Maybe Mike Hilton, as you mentioned. There's quite a few drivers in there which, if they get given the chance, they could cause a surprise and a bit of an upset at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're looking for tonight. And And they do have that one more chance in the last chance saloon. We'll talk more about that maybe later in the broadcast. But yeah, the guys that don't make it tonight will be looking for next week's race as their last chance to get that qualification spot, and so they can join in and race. So I think the grand final's gearing up to be a brilliant race, and we'll see a sort of bit of rehearsal for that at the front of the grid tonight. I think with the people that have already qualified, and they're already performing quite well in, as you can see on the qualifying. So we've got 7 minutes of qualifying, just over 7 minutes left, and it is the usual brigade. And I think, Scott, tonight, if anyone dips into the 51s, I think that would be a super special lap, and that's something to watch out for.
Well, we did get one of those laps from Christian Zeruta, the man who's currently on provisional pole position. He did pop a time in towards the end of the session, which put him into the 151s. It was a 151.9. There he is. We should also mention as well, as we had at Estoril, it is going to be the 420R machines that we've got racing here. We had the first 2 races in the Academy cars, then we've gone to the 420s. I imagine there might still be yet a bit of a mix-up. I guess Chris has got to decide which cars are going to be which for the last chance saloon and there for the 420Rs, in terms of which cars go into which race. And I guess in some cases, some drivers will be looking at that very carefully as to which car you pick for those 2 races if they have to compete in the last chance saloon race, and of course then the grand final, because as we've seen over the first 2 seasons that we've run, and indeed over the last couple of races in this Winter Euro Series, some drivers tend to favour some spec of car. Some tend to be stronger in the Academy car. Others feel that their pace is in the 420 in these machines tonight. So we might get some drivers where they'll be thinking if they can automatically get through, if they haven't got to race again, if let's say you go do it in sequence, so you've got Academy car, let's say for the last chance saloon, and then again in the 420R, those who want the 420R in the final and that are hoping for it, they're going to want to get that automatic qualifying spot to possibly leave themselves in a better position than they might be if they have to go to the last chance in a car which they know doesn't favour them as much as the other one.
And I genuinely, Scott, have not made up my mind what's going on. Also, it's a bit dependent on what's going to be going on with some car developments that we're hoping are in the lines, and we really would like to roll out sort of a new version of the car, and if that happens before the end of the season, then fantastic. We can use the new 420R and say in the background. So I'm leaving things open, and it doesn't hurt for them to not know exactly what's going on, but genuinely that's because I don't know what's going on right now. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite nice to, if there was a new spec of car which bring out, like, because of course I'm guessing this would bring it into line with the, as we talked about last week, the new spec for 2021 420R, which is running now Avon tyres, both slicks and indeed wets. It's also now running better springs and dampers, and also it's running a slightly higher rev limit, and all of that makes it now on pace very comparable, if not pretty much on par with a GT4 car, which if you think Caterhams are quick enough already, particularly the 420R cars are quick enough already, you then add all of that into the mix, and of course, and as somebody who's going to be driving one of these next year, Chris, this is going to be, well, I say a handful, but the fact that in the wet, apparently one driver said that no matter what he did, he just couldn't spin or lose grip in the car. These things are going to stick to the track literally like glue. Yeah,
it's a really exciting prospect, and yes, the idea is that they will be on a par with the GT4 machinery, and you know, one of the interesting things is the GT4 machinery kind of generates a lot of its speed in the straight line down the long straights that they race on. But obviously with the 420R, it's not top speed heavy, but it will have superb handling, especially on the slicks. It's going to be quite an epic experience for all the drivers, and I'm looking forward to that challenge for sure.
I think everyone is. I think it's certainly revitalised in the top category of Caterham racing, because I'm seeing more and more people that are getting very tempted by getting back into the championship. Lots of people who were racing in the past couple of seasons and then moved away for various things because of real life commitments or racing something else or taking a break for general reasons. But now they're starting to look back at it and think this looks like quite an interesting prospect now. So intriguing to see exactly who turns up for next year. There's some names, of course, being floated around that might make an appearance, but we'll have to wait and see. It could all be one big surprise. But I'm expecting the grids are going to be booming once again, and watching these uprated 420Rs for real is going to be quite a spectacle. Until then, we have got our virtual representations of the current spec of 420R, or the outgoing spec, and it's our Christian Zeruta still on pole position. He's back into the 51s, 151.981, but up there now, only just a tenth and a half behind him there, Chris, is Blair McConaughey. He's found some great pace here. Second quickest, the man who's been runner-up the last 2 times in the last 2 championships. He's competed in the Caterhams in real life, in the Academy in 2019 and in 2020 in the Road Sport, both time runner-up to his sparring partner Tom Willis. He's up to second place now, really starting to get the hang of the sim Caterhams now. With every single race weekend that he completes, he gets quicker and quicker. Will Rossetti, who was already qualified, is third. Guy Crawford, though, meanwhile, that's crucial. He's fourth quickest. He's the quickest of the cars that haven't got an automatic spot into the final just yet. So it's an obvious thing to say, I know, but the higher up you want to start, the better. And the fact that it's same time, thinking about it, it's kind of a catch-22 situation. Yes, he's high up the grid, but he's also amongst drivers that basically aren't really racing for anything other than just enjoy themselves and having a race. So he's got to be careful to, yes, I'm sure he'll go out there and race the guys around him, but not to do it too much to the extent where he gets caught up in somebody's incident, where he makes a mistake and it compromises his run, and some of the other cars behind that could take advantage to steal that spot away and compromise his chances could possibly take advantage if he slips up. So guy's got to try and play the percentage game here and decide what he wants to do.
Yeah, and he will have to have that same, the same conversation in his head you've just had out loud and constantly throughout the race, balancing off the advantage and disadvantage. And there's people like Paul Ferneyhoff here, who had a sort of off week last week, but is back on form here. Can see up in 7th place, making some great progress. And he will be in those he's in that qualifying position according to qualifying now, as long as Mark Bennett, who had a resurgent race at Estoril, so right back in the mix. And this is where the heart of the battle for the qualifying spaces are going to be. So Ferneyhoff, Bennett, and Crawford as well, and then Arnell looks like he's going to be next up with Fowler as well. So really going to be deep, and they're all sort of nicely aligned on the grid, aren't they? So we've got our sort of previous qualifiers mostly at the top of the sheet, and then it's followed up by these next hopefuls who are looking for one of those 3 spots.
Just caught something at the top of the time screen. I think that Christian Zeruta, whatever lap he was on, has possibly been flagged as being disallowed. Not his current pole time, but a lap he was on. It looks like I think he's been disallowed, or he's been flagged for track limits or running wide, because there was a small little red flag that came up next to his name there just for a second. So he's going to try and go for another lap and try and improve if he can, because his pole time advantage is only just over 1/10 of a second. Blair McConaughey then second, Will Rossetti third, but you're absolutely right, he's pretty much 2 by 2 for arguably the strongest drivers in the field that we have tonight. And then you've got, of course, Guy Crawford and Jensen Hassler, who he himself has been very impressive. He's only just started racing with us at the second round at second heat at Zolder, and he's been getting quicker and quicker. And he's had a couple of situations now, Chris, where he's had a cracking start. He's gone up there and challenged for the lead and been up there towards in the first couple of laps. But then whether it's just overheating the tyres, or just losing concentration, or losing his rhythm, or whatever it might be, or a combination of all those factors, he just seems to his pace just seems to tail off, particularly in the second half of the race, and he drops back from what could be a strong result. In Zolder, he had enough of a gap to hold on to second place, so that was not a problem. But Estoril, he kind of lost his momentum a bit and kind of started falling back towards the bottom of the top 10. So it wasn't, I guess, for him, by his standards, the best race he could have had.
Yeah, and it's, we're racing a 25-minute race with damage, so you've got to be concentrating all the way through, make sure that you stay clear of any issues and any contact with any barriers or other people. And yeah, it's quite a hard and long distance. It doesn't sound much from an outside perspective, but when you're sort of sitting there in a real car or even in the simulator, the concentration levels are high. You're trying to be as precise as you can be for 25 minutes, and that's no small feat.
Yeah, there's a reason why David Rowe obviously makes full use of the DPR simulator, of course, when he's driving in these races, and of course because it's the same sort of sim that he and the various people who are around DPR will coach drivers coming in to make them quicker and quicker. So I'm pretty sure, unless he's visited already, I guess you can tell me otherwise, I'm pretty sure like James Murphy's been down there and used, Darren Burke, of course, professional driver coach who works alongside some of the DPR drivers to get them quicker. I know James was mentioning that he works with Darren to get a little bit quicker, and it certainly seems to have had at least an effect in many cases, not just in the sim, but also in real life in the 270R champion he's been competing in this year. So interesting stuff all round for him, and not being here tonight means that it gives an opportunity to somebody else to have a go and to take full advantage of that as the qualifying session draws to a close. There was a couple of last minute changes in that order, but before we get racing underway, here is a rundown of how the grid is going to set. Remember, it's only one 25-minute race. There is a percentage amount of damage on, in terms, it's on 70% damage, so it's not full damage in terms of you stuff someone up the back, then you lose your front nose cone or your front wheel, but there is still damage that can cause you suspension issues or engine issues or something in between. So Christian Zeruta will start this race from pole position, the only man that dipped under the 152s. He's on pole with a 151.981, alongside him Blair McConaughey on the front row of the grid. Will Rossetti and the returning David Rowe are on the second row, and then right towards the end it was Mark Bennett who's now the quickest of the guys that hasn't qualified and got an automatic spot. He starts fifth alongside Guy Crawford in 6th, and those two I'm sure will be battling pretty hard for that primary promotion spot getting into the final at the Nürburgring. Jensen Hassler and Steve Arnell at 8th. Arnell also another one that's in the mix to get promoted, as is also Paul Fernhoff and Richard Gallagher. So there's 5 drivers in that top 10 that could definitely earn themselves one of those 3 promotion spots. James Fowler starts 11th. Steve McMaster's back down in 12th. Martin Buchan is 13th. Then James Wingfield, Tom McEwing, Andy Parker, Mike Hilton, and Alan Curtis round out the 18 cars on the grid for this penultimate, this final qualifying heat of the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series. Again, as ever, a thanks to DPR Motorsport, Just Add Lightness, and FPZERO, and Designers Play Structures, and Darren Burke, Performance Coach, for all of their support for this series in particular, and we hope it continues going forward into Season 3. So, let's just assess the situation before the start then. Top 4 positions are drivers that don't need to worry about qualifying. They already have. It's going to be arguably 5th place downwards where we need to focus our attention, because particularly on that 3rd row, where you've got 2 drivers that are going to be battling it out for those spots, both Mark Bennett and Guy Crawford. You've got to say, don't say this as a pun, but they've got to be in pole position, so to speak, for those promotion spots. But there's a few drivers in the back, like Steve Arnell on the left here, and also you've got Paul Fernhoff and others in the mix. Are certainly going to want to be on the prowl to get that victory, to get that promotion spot. So there's a lot at stake here for some drivers, but others will simply just be to tick off another race, get some bragging rights, and get another run out and see if they can put in a good performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely watching that mid pack. Just to correct, Gallagher has actually qualified, so he can be disregarded from the results. But as the lights come up, we'll find out soon who's going to get those spots.
Well, the rush down towards Tarzan Corner is about to begin as we wait for the red lights to come on one by one. 6 red lights, and once they all go out, it is qualification heat number 4 of the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series. They hold it for quite a while, but they get away cleanly. It's a cracking start from Zeruta from pole position, and immediately Mark Bennett slots into 5th place ahead of Guy Crawford. He gets the line down towards turn 1. Martin Rowe darts out to have a look. It's 3 abreast for seconds. Down the outside goes Rossetti. Up the inside goes David Rowe. And it looks to me as if McConaughey had to capitulate and let them both through to avoid an incident. And he's now under threat from Mark Bennett for 4th position. They've all got through turn 1, touch wood, safely. As they come up through the right-hander here of Gerlach and into the Hugenholtz corner of the 2 remodeled banked corners. And also there was some remodelling of turn 1 slightly for an extended pit lane, because of course this is the new 2020 Grand Prix layout that would have been used in the Dutch Grand Prix had a certain thing called COVID-19 not happened. But that's for next year now for the Dutch Grand Prix. But right now they're heading in towards into Shavlak for the first time. And it is still Zeruta who leads the way. Rossetti in 2nd place, but Rowe on his tail. And going for 4th now, up the inside into Masters Corner goes Mark Bennett, and he really is giving it some here. The former 420R racer himself in real life, and also former Honda VTEC Challenge racer, certainly making the most of his grip advantage to get past McConaughey here. And also trying to get involved in Jensen Hassler. Also under threat now is, you see, Guy Crawford under attack from that Steve Arnell. And again, as we talked about, it's these 3 or 4 cars in the mix that are going to be battling for these promotion spots. Currently at the moment, even though it's only lap 1, Bennett, Arnell and Crawford have them, but watch out for the likes of Fernhoff and Fowler and James Wingfield behind. They've got gaps to make up as there's more position swapping. Running wide there with Jensen Hassler. He tries to rejoin as he exits the Hans Ernst S. But even though there's been quite a lot of battling to and fro here, Chris, and I hope I don't jinx it now when I say this, touch wood, everyone appears to be getting through the first lap pretty much trouble-free.
Yeah, brilliant racing so far, isn't it? They're sort of 2x2 around every single corner, and in fact, pack racing at its very best. So yeah, long may that continue through this race. It's hard to see it continuing, but yeah, we've got Arnell here fighting side by side with Crawford for those qualifying spaces as well. So Mark Bennett making the best deal of probably the qualifiers coming through the field slightly, but yeah, Arnell still sitting ahead of this point in time. But yeah, it's really good to see them going hammer and tongue. It looks like we've got a slow-moving Paul Fernhoff. I think that's probably just out of the last corner, but we have got some jiggling at the back of the field. So yeah, there's definitely been some contact, and hopefully that'll be it for a little bit.
Speaking of rejigging of positions, I just spotted David Rowe there as he was going through the right hand of Gerlach box. He's up into 2nd place now, so it's a DPR 1-2. Now he's going to see if he can try and close down the gap that Zeruta already has, which is 2.6 seconds. As Rossetti has a look and just had a look up the inside, and running a little white deep into Shavlak won't really help Rowe as he comes off the corner. And Rossetti will try and get him back. And look at Mark Bennett trying to get through, and he almost touches the rear. He has tagged the rear of Will Rossetti's car. How he saved that, I'm not sure. But Mark Bennett's on an absolute charge here. He's up the inside into turn 9. They'll try and get the switch back here for turn 10 as they come up through this little winding section. McConaughey's back in play here, as is also Jensen Hassler, and also watch out for Steve Arnell and Guy Crawford. This lead group is getting bigger and bigger as they turn their way out of turn 10 through this slightly curving straight towards the Hans Ernst S. And Mark Bennett, you have to say, really, either he's had his Weetabix this morning or he's certainly found something to pump him up, because he's absolutely on fire at the moment, pace-wise. He's all over the back of Will Rossetti. Never mind an automatic qualification spot. He'd be on course for that's third, if not second place at this rate.
Yeah, we saw him qualify really high up last time. I can't remember if it was second or third, but he did tend to drop through the field throughout that race. So he looks hungry, doesn't he, to maintain and in fact improve his position. So he started back in about 5th or 6th and now finds himself in 4th and really looking, the car putting Rossetti really under pressure. Looks like he's quick enough to keep up with David Rowe. Looks like, and also into turn 1, he's got a good run here. He's in the toe. He's going to pull out onto the inside. A classic overtake move. He's got the braking done and he's made that through. He made it look easy, didn't he?
It was 2 by 2 by 2 down the pit straight there. You had Bennett and Rossetti in the mix. You also had then, that was Jensen Hassler getting past Ben McConaughey, and also Guy Crawford remaining ahead of Steve Arnell. So all sorts going on as now David Rowe starts to escape up the road. But guess what's going to be careful here is that Mark Bennett, now he's got some clear air. He's got to use it now, and either do one or two things. Use his superior grip advantage to try and pull away from the pack behind him and chase after David Rowe, or if he can, possibly kind of inadvertently say to Will, look, we've had our battle now, let's not fight each other, let's go and catch David and make it a 3-car scrap per second. Let's see if we can close up, and maybe the 3 of us can try and stop Saruta, who already, Chris, on lap 3 has got the gap out there just over 3 seconds and doesn't show any signs of slowing down. And obviously, why would he?
No, absolutely great performance by Saruta out front. I know him and Dave were egging each other on pre-race to see who was going to be best, and I would say that David Rowe tends to get the better of Saruta on a number of occasions. So the fact that he's actually socking it to him right now is a good thing for Saruta. He's got 2.7 seconds advantage currently, and we're seeing Bennett now maybe pulling away from Rossetti, who's now having to concentrate on Hassler, who's right on his tail. So we're seeing the toe game played out here quite a lot, where Bennett was benefiting from the toe, and then Rossetti looks like he'd got the toe, but he's now giving one to Hassler. So yeah, it's all about managing those gaps, managing the cars around you so that you can maintain your effort.
So if we look at who's set to be automatically promoted at this stage, then it is going to be Mark Bennett, along with Guy Crawford and Steve Arnell. Those are the 3 drivers that will get those last 3 automatic qualifying spots into the grand final at the Nürburgring in a couple of weeks' time. As they come out of Ari Lindike corner, off that now new long banked corner, they slingshot even faster onto the pit straight, and we see a change of position potentially here for Steve Arnell, which is not going to help when he's bid for trying to get himself a qualifying spot. He's got to be careful, because behind trying to bear down whilst also have their own battle are both James Fowler and Paul Fernerhuff, so they're also scrapping over the final top 10 spot. Steve Arnell managed to hold off Steve McMaster for a second there, but it looks as though he's going to come back for more in towards Gerlach Bocht, and in turn Steve Arnell's fired up enough to go straight onto the tail of Guy Crawford and try and put him under pressure for that final qualifying spot. So second and third automatic qualifiers at the moment, Chris, are having their own private battle. Well, I say private because Steve McMaster is fairly close there, but also at the same time, if they can also either catch Blair McConaughey, it might be a benefit to make him a couple more spots and keep them a bit safer from the cars behind that could also try and take places from them. If they can't shake Steve McMaster and more cars latch onto the back of them, particularly Fowler and Fernerhuff, that could spell trouble for these two if they can't stop battling.
That's right, McMaster he's already got his qualifying spot, so he is their rear gunner at the moment, and Arnell absolutely nailed that braking zone. We saw him flying past again McMaster, who was looking like he was challenging, but then equally made up plenty of time on Guy Crawford as well coming out of that corner, so absolutely nailed on that first turn, which has really put him in good position here to battle. But Steve Arnell will know the situation. I think he'll know that he's in a qualifying spot, although it's quite hard to manage and actually identify exactly who's ahead of you. But like you say, we've got Fernerhuff and Fowler following on back, and they're both eligible for those qualifying spots, so they're actually having a little battle of their own just behind, as we saw, and currently Fowler's just in front of Fernerhuff.
It's interesting, I was watching Steve McMaster whilst you're looking at that. He seems to be kind of biding his own time here. He's not making a desperate move, but he's just sitting there and waiting for an opportunity, and he might possibly get it down the pit straight if he can get a double toe from the 2 cars in front, because both Steve Arnell and Guy Crawford will be nose to tail on the run towards Tarzan once again for the start of another lap. This is now Paul Fernhoff as Jensen Hassler sets the fastest lap of the race on a 151.893. That might be with the end of the tow, but tow or not, that's quicker than the pole position time for Christian Zeruta, which is pretty impressive. Up the inside into Tarzan goes Paul Fernhoff, and he looks to try and hold on as James Fowler tries to retaliate around the outside line exit, despite the bumpiness on the exit of the corner. It looks as though Fernhoff has got the job done. And meanwhile, this is not ideal for Steve Arnell because he has been passed by Steve McMaster. He did say he would line him up potentially to get at least one move done down the pit straight, and McMaster's proven that theory true. Arnell will try and come back at him here, but McMaster's going to keep one eye on the car behind, one eye on the car in front, and see if he can not only try and pass Guy Crawford and put another car between himself and everyone else, but also see if he can fend off Steve Arnell, who's trying to get that place back, because he knows if he can't get past and get stuck behind, he's going to come under massive pressure from both Fernhoff and Fowler behind. We're both just as eager, if not more, to get that final automatic qualifying spot.
So further up the field, David Rose actually dropped a little bit further behind Christian at the moment, so another couple of tenths further back. Bennett is now a couple of seconds off the back of Rose, so he's sort of in there, but Hassler's coming back to sort of hassle him, and so is Rossetti. But remember, neither of those two need to qualify, so he might even be able to give up those spaces without any issue. But yeah, they're still looking at the key battle here, as we're still seeing Arnell and McMaster going side by side, with Guy Crawford now gaining a little bit of gap, and that's obviously not what Arnell wants, with Fernhoff and Fowler chasing him down hard.
So looking at the time, we've got we've only had just under 10 minutes to go in this, 9 minutes gone in this race, so there's still plenty of time for positions to change. Quick checking with the leaders. Christian Zeruta now, the gap has stabilised at 3 seconds. It hasn't gone down too much, but David Rowe hasn't got the benefit of a tow or anything, so he's in a little bit of no man's land, so he's just simply having to rely on pure pace without a tow. Here's the scrap going on for third place, so now we see Bennett ahead of Hassler. Rossetti has been shuffled back, another spot here. He now changed McMaster, who's still under threat from Steve Arnell for his currently 8th position. And whilst that's all been going on, Blair McConaughey has tried to pull away, but it's more Guy Crawford pulling away from the two cars behind him and trying to chase after McConaughey himself. So possible changes here if Crawford can carry on. And Crawford's always been a driver, we've made a joke about always talking him up in the past, but Guy genuinely is a driver who he doesn't do anything spectacular. We don't say that in a negative term, but he's a driver who is very consistent, very rhythmic, very almost like a pendulum in terms of he's very consistent in just racking up the lap times and quickly and slowly but clinically and calmly just making up positions and staying out of trouble. And usually he finds himself in quite high spots in the top 5 and around the top 10 because he does keep his nose out of trouble. He doesn't go looking for fights too much when he doesn't need to. He just lets the race come to him. He lets others make mistakes around him and picks off drivers one by one. He moves at a sensible, clean and actually quite feasible, rather than making dive bombs into corners and possibly compromising his race and the cars around it. Yeah,
we've seen him actually sort of have a little bit of an off patch in the last few races where he's been at the back and maybe got involved in accidents, and therefore we haven't seen that normal rhythm that you talk about, but it looks like he's right back in that zone tonight, and you know, as you say, he's just creeping up through the field, isn't he? The lead battle ahead is still looking like it's starting to rage, with Hassler now right on the tail of Bennett there, and Rossetti following the straight. So I'm sure McConaughey and Gallagher are both looking to sort of drag themselves back up to that, because that'll certainly help Crawford in his sort of aim to get this qualifying space. And it looks like currently Arnell's challenge has faded.
Yeah, just on the mention of Richard Gallagher, sadly, it looks as though for whatever reason he has had to retire from this race, as has also James Wingfield. So if he does come back next week, he will have to try and book one of the 6 remaining spots in the final via the last chance saloon race at Barcelona. I think there's a move on just in front, but it looks like Hassler was trying to get past Bennett here for 3rd and 4th position. And Bennett just about held on, but it's brought Rossetti back into play here as they come through the John Hugenholtz hairpin, off the banking, a little loose over the curb there was Rossetti as he put the power down. But now 3 of them all together through the Rob Schlotermaker S's up towards Shavelak once again over the crest. Very tricky breakers in this. You approach very quickly after 2 very high-speed corners, and it's a long downhill corner where it just gets faster and faster all the way through the apex and then climbs back up the other side. These are 2 tricky corners here. There's very fast first right-hander that goes faster than you think. It looks tight on on the circuit map, but it certainly is quicker than you think, and using that to full advantages. Jensen Hassler up the inside, there's a little bit of rubbing, and just behind them, Rossetti just arrives on the rear of Mark Bennett's car as he turns in towards turn 9 and 10, has a look up the inside, and that's not exactly in Mark Bennett's script. He gets tagged around by Blair McConaughey, and that, we spoke about it earlier on, he couldn't afford to get involved in other people's battles with drivers that are already been qualified. Blair McConaughey went up the inside, and we're not ones to kind of fully throw our weight behind it, whose fault it was, but I have to say, Chris, cards on the table, 100% Blair's fault, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the timing screen at the time, and unfortunately I missed the detail of that, but whatever the detail of it is, now we find Mark Bennett in, I think, is he still in a qualifying position? Let's have a check down the list. I think he might still be in a qualifying position, but obviously it's nowhere near as comfortable as it was before. I think that's Rossetti maybe waiting there for Bennett.
Yeah, it looks like it. So Rossetti's letting through. So sorry, forgive me. I said Blair when it was actually should have been. I said Blair when it should have been Will. So forgive me for that, Blair. It was 100% Will's fault by the looks of it. Now Bennett's now got in an important battle here because he's in the mix with Steve Arnell. He is now the second of the 3 qualifiers in terms of those who can go through. So we've thrown wide on the exit Tarzan, though. That's not going to help him either. He was still a little bit frustrated after the contact. Ironically, Rossetti's back up the inside, then bang wheels again on the run through the right-hander into Gerlach and into John Hugenholtz. He's, oh dear, Mark Bennett's is up. Well, he had a spin. I think he just got rather frustrated there, I'm afraid. And so Mark's decided that it's rather than try and struggle on, he'll have to try and come back again for the last chance qualifier. And that's a shame because it was such a good race. And then I think maybe frustration got the better of him there, particularly into the John Hugenholtz S's where. And did he make contact again with Rossetti, but it looks as though he just got to the point where he kind of had enough, I think, and that's a real shame.
I think he made some contact with Steve Arnell going around, just as I think you were sort of slightly looking to the side, and he made wheel-to-wheel contact with Arnell, which put him wide. And the thing is, once you get out your rhythm, we talk about as drivers the rhythm quite a lot, and once you're removed from that rhythm, it really is hard to regain it. You're always on the bit of the track you don't want to be on. You're carrying too much speed, or you're braking, having to brake harder because you're on the inside, and that can lead to then further incidents. And that's kind of what happened in that situation. Really, it was 2 cars into one, and I think because he hit the wall, he would have sustained quite a lot of damage at that point, and so he actually felt the better part was to actually go back to the pits, but because obviously if the car's broken, there's nothing you can do, and he was properly embedded in that wall at the time.
Yeah, and also it's a safety issue for the cars behind in terms of their race, in terms of the position he was in, because he was right in the middle of a pack of cars in that second half of the field, so he wanted to try and escape as quick as he could back to the pits to try and make sure he wasn't compromising anyone's races, or if there wasn't any compromise, it was as small as possible. So unfortunate for Mark, but of course, as I say, he'll try and struggle around to get that damage fixed if he can. If he does go back out once more, he'll have to try and at least get a finish to prepare himself if he does make an appearance at Barcelona for the last chance saloon race. So this now means that Steve Arnell is arguably unchallenged in that second automatic qualifying spot. The third spot now is currently held by James Fowler. He has got 2 drivers behind him that can take it from him, both Tom McEwing, who's set to be one of next year's Caterham Academy drivers, and Paul Fernerhuff, who is a many sort of Caterham sim racer himself, and had his moments in the caterhamracer.com races in the kind of art car style Caterham 420R. And this is the scrap, whilst it might be for 9th, 10th, 11th overall, it is for that precious final qualification spot. So James Fowler, I imagine here, Chris, the one that's going to be transition to being the one with the most pressure now, because he may or may not realise that he arguably is on the cusp here. He's got to be very careful that both Tom and Paul don't close in so much. He gets caught up in battles, finds himself in a similar situation to the one that befell Mark. Yeah,
if you're racing and you're sitting in sort of 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th, you're not necessarily thinking that you're in a qualifying space. You don't always know who's ahead of you at that point, and therefore I'm sure they're just fighting heavily. But we saw Fernie Huff much higher up earlier in the race, so he has just gradually slipped back. I don't know if he had some issues, but certainly Fowler's managed to get past him, and so's McEwing, who was chasing down earlier. So these two look like they are having the battle for that final qualifying space. Crawford is currently looking comfortable in 4th place, but in the first qualifying space, and he but we've seen how quickly that can change for Mark Bennett, and therefore it changes the whole complexion of the race. So still 8 minutes to go, so still a lot can happen.
It can, and it might happen to James Fowler if he doesn't play his cards right, and it's going to happen to him now, I think, is slipping up the inside goes Tom McEwing, and what do we say? He can't afford a mistake, he can't be on the cusp here, and that's exactly what's happened. Fowler's got the hopefully the remedy here, which is to come back up the inside in the slipstream down towards Tarzan. He's going to be side by side in the braking towards the right-hander. He's got the track position, gets his nose in front, but McEwen might not give it up that easy. The pair will go side by side on corner exit. McEwen runs a little wide, but he has to capitulate and let him through. Or does he? And I'm not quite sure maybe that Fowler realised that Tom McEwen was still alongside him there. There was almost a little bit of contact, if not a tiny bit of rubbing there, but obviously non-intentional. And as he comes up through the John Hugenholtz corner, now you can see just behind, it might even be it's not going to be a three-car scrap for the promotion spot, because the car behind these three is the Scott Martin Buchan, who's already qualified after he managed to do so at Estoril. So it means that if he does get involved in this battle, he is effectively just an outside catalyst in many cases, because he's really secured his spot and doesn't need to battle too hard. Now, Steve Arnell's in the pit lane now, so that's another one of our guys, and he's actually out of the race. So Steve Arnell then, more drama for our potential qualifiers. This changes the complexion once more. So it is now still Guy Crawford who has got the automatic promotion spot, but now second spot goes to James Fowler. He moves up a spot, and Tom McEwen is now the man that gets the third promotion spot, and he's battling hard with Paul Furness behind him. So this final promotion spot now between these three, the final two at least, this battle has got a little more spicy, Chris.
Yeah, 2 out of these 3 will now qualify, so everything does spin on a hat, doesn't it? I wonder what happened to Steve. Maybe he's got some damage again that caused it, or maybe even a technical glitch. We have seen that. Paul Ferneyhoff right in the mix there, shoving his nose where Tom McEwen really didn't want it to go. But James Fowler showing at the moment that, with a nice slide into that corner, looking like he might have broken the toe, and therefore really the battle now is between McEwen and Ferneyhoff coming into turn 1.
So let's see who can line up who on the run down towards Tarzan then, with just about under 6 minutes to go as they head down the pit straight. This is the onboard shot from Paul Ferneyhoff. His gap-wise, looking at where he is, of course, the magical margin you want to be in, we always say, is under half a second. And as they turn in, he is within that, so he would have closed in a little more down the pit straight on the run towards Tarzan. Martin Buchan there in the black car with the blue roll cage just behind him, 11th position, isn't too far away, but again, I remind you, he is a driver that has already automatically qualified, so regardless of within reason what he does here, if he passes drivers here, he won't gain any more spots. He's simply just gaining places in the field to move higher up the order by the checkered flag. But more importantly for these drivers, particularly James Fowler here, and Tom McEwen and Paul Ferneyhoff, who slipped back a little bit on the exit of the John Hugenholtz hairpin. This is going to be the crucial point here with just 5 minutes to go. So 3 cars fighting over 2 more promotion spots, with Crawford, Touchwood appearing to be relatively safe. He's got a bit of no man's land between Jensen Hassler in 3rd and Len McConaughey in 5th. So this, at the moment, Chris, here is arguably the key battle here in terms of who gets what position. And I guess it also decides the way, in many cases, not where they start, but also some kind of an order, I suppose, for the finale as well.
Yeah, it does make a difference for the qualifying of the finale, but obviously it's just nice to get yourself comfortably in there. It's interesting, this battle, for how things ebb and flow. A lap ago we saw Ferneyhoff really putting pressure on Tom McEwen, but now it looked like, well, for a brief moment there, it looked like McEwen was then back putting pressure back on Fowler, but it's all switched again as we've gone through that chicane. And it's almost like, different drivers have their different strengths around the track, where they carry a bit more momentum, where their kind of line works a bit better, and now Ferneyhoff again is looking definitely in the good seat to be making this position change going up the home straight.
Might be good race car practice for him for Academy next year in 2021 if he can hold on. 2 of them will go side by side on the sprint down towards Tarzan. Again, looks like Ferneyhoff will be on the outside line. And McEwen standing his ground. He's not going to allow him to get past that easy. And here comes Martin Buchan. He's an experienced sim racer in himself. And he's going to try and squeeze past if he can. Of course, remember, I stress again, he's not involved in getting a qualifying spot. He's already qualified. So whatever he does here, as long as I guess it doesn't compromise the 2 cars in front, is entirely up to him. So he can choose exactly how he wants to run this last couple of laps here, battling with these 2 cars. But of course, at the same time, he will know in the back of his mind that he may or may not be a catalyst between these 3. Decide who is the unlucky driver that will miss out on that last qualifying spot as they come up through the Rob Schlotermaker S's, and Ferneyhoff thumped the curb on the second part of the S's there as they come over the crest of Shavelak. As now we see, oops, that's a slide that I think in the front for Will Rossetti is getting very sideways through Masters corner. He held it, which is pretty impressive, but just touched the wheel onto the grass there, and that's what just took the back end of the car around, which wasn't too careful. So as they come out of turn 9 up towards turn 10, and Buchan's there, he's on the prowl, he smells blood in the water, and he's going to try and get a move here on Fernhoff, if he can, he's looking around the outside, which is a bold enough move in itself, and he runs wide on the exit of turn 10 now as he comes down towards the Hans Ernst S's, but he's still on a slipstream, Chris, and there's always an opportunity. If you can't do it here, there's always a chance once more down towards Tarzan.
Yeah, this looks like it might be the end of Fernhoff's, with him having to defend so heavily and with only 2.5 minutes to go. Could be the end of Fernhoff's challenge for those qualifying spaces at the moment. You might be better to let him go and see whether he can play interference with the cars in front. But again, that assumes that he knows what's going on. He's doing a really heavily defensive line. That's not going to help into that final corner. And now he has got the inside line there, and so he's going to be on the back foot coming onto this back straight.
Yeah, neither of them will have the benefit of a tow because obviously Fernhoff's not within half a second of the car in front. So now Fernhoff's going to have to be the one that punches the hole in the air, and it's now going to be Buchan that takes the full advantage down towards turn 1. They turn in, still look at Tom McEwen, but what's the outcome of the cars behind? For the second time in his manual laps, McEwen goes to the outside line, gets a little wide on the exit, but again he stays to drivers left as they come towards right-hander at Gerlach and up towards the John Hugenholtz hairpin, the sort of highly increased banking here where you carry lots more speed through the apex and on the corner exit. Oh, and a big twitch for Buchan there. I think he had to possibly hesitate because he didn't realise that Fernhoff wasn't going to be as quick as he thought he was. Wasn't as quick as he thought he was going to be on corner exit there, so he lost a bit of momentum, and that could have been tricky there, even though Martin's not going to qualify, doesn't need to do anything else to kind of get the qualifying spot because he's done so already. Doesn't change the fact, does it, Chris, that he's a sim racer through and through, and if there's a gap to make a move, and it's feasible to do so in a safe and fair way, we'll go for it.
Yeah, like I say, they don't necessarily know what's going on. They just see a car in front of them. They just naturally want to be in front of it. So that's kind of where the mentality on that one is. We've got a minute to go, so I'm just cautious of the front of the grid to make sure they are going to get across this line, which it does look like they are going to. So they will have one more lap to go. But as you can see, Christian Schroeter here has had a dominant race out front with nearly 3.5 second gap now over a very lonely race for David Rowe, who's here just trailing him around, and then Hasler again another 4 seconds back. So really the front of the grid has had a very spaced out, dare I say, a bit boring race compared to the midfield, that's for sure. But equally, Guy Crawford, I'm sure, was pretty happy with that fact, given that he has got a gap in front of him and a gap behind him, and his only enemy is his own head as he goes through this thing, these final few laps. But back in to the battle we've been following, and we'll keep an eye on when the leaders look like they'll be coming around that final bit. But I think it's worth keeping an eye on Fowler here and McEwen, because they're the two in the seats at the moment.
Yeah, interesting enough, look at lap times to go on to the last lap. Tom McEwen was 0.4 of a second quicker than James Fowler on that last lap. Now he's been released from getting past Paul Fernhoff. Again, it doesn't matter what order these two finish in, as long as they keep it on the road and don't make a mistake. They will get an automatic qualifying spot. What they've got to be careful of, this might be famous last words, is that they don't come to blows on this last lap and give Paul Fernhoff a free pass into the grand final. So let's see if he can hold into position, come up through the slow to make it S's and up through Schaeflack. You have to say visually, Tom McEwen is getting closer. He's got the gap down to less than half a second now. He's managed to pull back actually 0.4 of a second in just the first part of a lap alone. So Tom McEwen could be on course here to maybe still automatically qualify, but to get the bragging rights would be which of the drivers in that second and third order, which spot he actually takes and which one he can take as bragging rights. Meanwhile, this man hasn't got to worry about that. He doesn't have to worry about pretty much anything for this 25-minute race. He's shot off from pole position, taken the lead, and that gap has stayed very static at around 3 to 3.5 seconds. But regardless of the efforts of David Rowe, no one's been able to touch him. And again, I always say it every time, there's a justification why he's a former Caterham race winner in real life, a former championship contender in real life, and he's, of course, once again already booked his ticket to the final, but he's going to stamp authority on this race at Zandvoort as he heads to the pit wall and will take victory in the final qualification heat here at Zandvoort. Christian Schroeter wins the 4th race of the Windsor Euro Series. David Rowe shoots across the line in 2nd place, and another well-earned podium for Jensen Hassler in 3rd. More importantly, Guy Crawford is the first automatic qualifier for Heat 4. He gets 4th place and an automatic place into the Nürburgring Grand Final. McConaughey and McMaster come through next ahead of Rossetti, and as for the battle of the 2nd and 3rd promotion spots, it's going to be Fowler just ahead of McEwen still, and Paul Fernhoff does indeed unfortunately miss out, but he did pull away in the last couple of laps from Martin Buchan, who was challenging him late on. 12th place goes to Andy Parker. He'll have to come back next time for the last chance saloon, as will of course Mike Hilton and Andy Curtis. Then the last couple of cars that came across the line, because we had 4 retirements in total, being Steve Arnell, Mark Bennett, James Wingfield, and and other driver that we'll get to in a second. So, Christian Zaruta, once again on winning form as he was at Zolder. I think he picks up victory and does it fairly comfortably. Even though it says 2.2 seconds, he did back off at the end to coast across the line in easy fashion. David Rowe, good to see him back in the mix and showing his pace overall with second. Jensen Haster, again, still improving as a sim racer in caterhamracer.com world with third. And Guy Crawford then is the first of the 3 automatic qualifiers from this heat, drivers that haven't already done so. So he will get that spot and join the 9 other drivers that have also qualified previously, alongside him, plus the 2 drivers that qualified tonight alongside him as well. Blair McConaughey 5th, Steve McMaster 6th, and Will Rossetti 7th. Didn't have anything to worry about. And now neither do James Fowler in 8th and Tom McEwing in 9th. There also the 2 fellow automatic qualifiers for the grand final coming up in the next couple of weeks. Then Paul Fernerhuff will have to try again in the last chance of the race in 10th place, but was in the mix to try and get a promotion spot. 11th goes to Martin Buchan, Andy Parker 12th from Mike Hilton and Alan Curtis. And then the 4 cars that we lost, sadly, including cars that definitely would have been in contention to be in promotion had their races gone better, included Steve Arnell, Mark Bennett and James Wingfield. And we also lost, sadly, Richie Gallagher towards the beginning of the race in the first couple of laps as well. So, another race which was full of interesting moments. I don't think it was as to be fair, action-packed as any other races, but it did have its key moments, and certainly had moments which were crucial for those that needed to get those places to get to Germany for the final in a couple of weeks. But even so, a top 3 that is, I guess, based on form in this Winter Euro Series, Chris. Not really too much of a surprise, but I think it was good to see that Guy Crawford was not just the first qualifier home, quite a canter and in quite a dominant fashion compared to those who were trying to bid for a place that was up for grabs as well. Yeah,
he did a fantastic job to control that race from his perspective. Like you say, a little bit less eventful out front, but you know, the battles were all happening exactly where we wanted them, which was fill the places. I've just seen Steve Arnell noticing that his computer crashed, so unfortunately he lost his place to a technical glitch rather than an accident or anything else. So he's not too happy with that, and I think Mark Bennett is a bit sore after being had to make contact in that kind of early part of the race. But yeah, well done to Guy. And again, I should say, commiserations to Paul Ferniehoff, who again misses out by just a single spot. I'm sure he'll be featuring quite heavily in the Last Chance Saloon next week.
Yeah, he'll certainly be hoping if he can redeem himself for next week if he can. And I guess is our time as always to go and don your hypothetical headset and microphone. I guess as you already have one anyway, but you know what I mean. To have one down the pit lane and see if we can find some drivers. Now, whether it'll be overall top 3, whether it'll be ones that are qualified, I guess is entirely up to you. So, as I always say, Chris, off you go.
I'm going to start by trying to get. I'm going to concentrate on the qualifiers. We often speak to the race leaders, so let's see if we can get them. And Guy, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you in the commentary. Well, I mean, what a race! It looked like you might have some competition early doors, but it kind of settled down towards the end, which I'm sure you were grateful for.
I was extremely grateful for it, particularly because my son chose that time to walk right in front of my VR headset, so I couldn't see anything for about 5 seconds. I thought, oh no, the first race I haven't been crashed into, and it's all going to go pear-shaped, but luckily got away with it.
Yeah, you've had a bit of an unfortunate season so far, a bit of a dip in form, and obviously getting caught up in battles a bit further down the field, but in general, you've seen that the kind of level of competition has raised again, and you know, I guess that's why it's really tough to get to that front position where it's a little bit clearer and a little bit more calm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The competition is, well, certainly from my point of view anyway, pretty impressive. And it's just, for me, it's all about, you know, I don't qualify very well and I don't start very well, and that puts me in the sort of mid-pack battle. And then, you know, even if I was fast enough, I can't catch up because, you know, the leaders have all sort of disappeared off into the distance by that point.
There you go. You've got your qualifying spot, so hopefully we'll see you in the grand final, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty. And I think we've also got James Fowler, who is another qualifier tonight. So let's see if we can get James. James, I don't know if you've got us in the commentary box. Mr. Fowler, are you there? I think he might have disappeared off. So we'll leave him alone. Maybe we will then give Christian a chance. I can't see Tom McCurring, so we'll give Christian a chance as race winner, see if he's available. Christian, have you got us in the commentary box? This isn't going well, Scott.
No one wants to talk tonight.
Christian, you there? Ah, here he is.
Oh, there he is.
Yes.
So, I don't know if that was a good use of 25 minutes or not, Christian, because you seem to just disappear off down the road. I guess it was quite good for you to sock one to David and sort of show him who's boss.
I'd argue it was comfortably sock one to David, actually. But yes, it's always nice to stick one to Dave, isn't it?
Yeah, and say some of your lap times tonight.
I think we should get him in here.
I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not going to do it. Your lap times have been pretty stellar at this track, all week, and I guess you showed it again. And you must be pretty confident, sort of heading towards that grand final with the performances you're putting in right now.
Well, I was just thinking back to a couple of years ago, Cheesy. Following a certain yellow car around here.
Yeah, I tried to put some lap times in on this circuit earlier this year, and I would have been on grid B for tonight. So let's not go there. So you certainly, whilst I love driving it in real life, I haven't got to grips with it yet. So yeah, I guess looking towards that grand final, who do you think your sort of main enemies competitors are going to be?
No, let's use enemies. I prefer that. I think Murphy is annoyingly fast by the looks of things after his little race the other week. Cherney is always quick.
Yeah, and we haven't seen him turn up. We haven't seen him turn up into the qualifying races yet. I think he's busy building cars, so we're interesting to see whether he does turn up for the last chance saloon, and therefore, but he'll always compete at the front, won't he?
Well, fingers crossed not.
So I think we're hoping for a really good race, so we look forward to seeing you there in a couple of weeks, and you can sort of enjoy and watch through the last chance saloon with us all next week.
Likewise, I shall look forward to it.
All right, speak soon.
Cheers.
There you go, Scott. I think we'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, good stuff. So good to hear from our race winner and a couple of our, well, at least one of our qualifiers anyway. He's certainly happy with the pace that he was showing, so that's good to see. So I guess the stressful bit for most drivers is out of the way now, in terms of, for those who have qualified, they can either get an extra week now to either put some practice in or just enjoy, I guess, maybe the Christmas period coming up, of course, because obviously crazy to think that next week is going to be Christmas, so given everything's gone on this year, but of course it means that, well, just before that, in fact, we're going to be having, of course, just before it, before we get to the big day, there is going to be that crucial last chance saloon. So maybe there's an option here for one of 6 drivers, or if for 6 drivers to get a bit of an early Christmas present, shall we say, as an automatic the final promotion spot into the grand final through Barcelona. But that's going to be a race where, I guess to a certain extent, we don't really know what to expect, because it's going to be full of drivers who I think arguably, unless they've been back in the B races, haven't really won a race. And again, that's not so disrespectfully, it's the case of just because the standard of the drivers in this championship, in this series, genuinely is so high that we usually only see drivers mostly in the kind of front half of the field to front 2/3. So there's going to be drivers that will get a little bit of the spotlight, drivers that will be in positions where, compared to where they've been in previous races in these series, might not have been as high, as it might be a chance for them to properly capitalise on that. But crucially, it's going to be whoever ends up in that top 6, and by the time they get to the checker flag, that's it, you're locked in. If you're 7th or lower, that's it, your series is over.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we are only going to be running with people who have not qualified. So anyone who has qualified will not be entering into that last chance saloon. So as you say, it will be the top 6 who qualify by rights. And then if anyone can't make the grand final for whatever, we will use the results of that last chance to see who's the next person who will be getting that spot. And yeah, it's going to be really good to see the midfield sort of not in the midfield anymore. They're going to be out front on their own. And yes, we will get to see some of the people that are just on that cusp of the B grid. Because we'll have the top sort of 8 positions will be, or 8 or 9 positions will be free of cars from where they're at. So it's going to be exciting for those guys, and it's going to be good for us to broadcast on some of the people that, the broadcast doesn't necessarily get to see that often. And I'm looking forward to being able to show them what they're doing there as well, out in the wild.
Yeah, likewise. And of course, as we said, the place that it's going to be, virtually at least, is going to be Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Spain, and that's particularly with another circuit that's got a quite a long front straight, which means that if you thought slipstreaming down here was quite key, was entertaining, and particularly Estoril as well, it's going to be even more so when we get to Spain in 7 days' time, of course. And then after that, of course, we have got the Nürburgring Grand Finals. We keep on saying 29th of December, the last little bit of caterhamracer.com racing. What's been a strange year on many fronts, but of course, the last bit before we go into 2021, we're fingers crossed we get some more normality, and of course, also we see more racing going forwards. I guess throughout the season as well. Thanks again to Chris, of course, for all his hard work on producing things. Thanks to all of you that have watched, and also if you do get a chance in future streams and also watching back, do be sure to to like and also to subscribe to the caterhamracer.com YouTube channel. Also head to caterhamracer.com to find out more information, particularly if you might want to give this a go. Of course, we have the caterhamracer.com Discord, so if you do want to give it a go, you'll be able to join that. You'll do your virtual arts test, so to speak, to prove that you're a safe and clean enough racer to join in. And once you've done that, you can then start to try and pre-qualify for races on the service for future events going forward as well. But that's then, and this is now. 2 more races left in the Winter Euro Series, and it really is becoming crunch time now. 6 places remaining, and of course, it's going to be all up for grabs for those who haven't qualified yet and will be under pressure to do so. Before we leave, once again, a big thank you to all of our supporters for this series, because as we always mention, as we always appreciate, the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. FPZERO Simulators, providing professional-grade simulators for your home and our drivers. And by just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7, with additional support for the design and display structures, and Darren Burke, performance driver coach. For myself, Chris, and everyone at caterhamracer.com, thanks for watching. The main 12 spots have been decided. 6 more to go. We will get them in Barcelona. Catch us this time next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.